previous videos, we mentioned about various standard form of contract in Malaysia. We have PAM contract, we have PWD 203A, and other standard form of contract. In these videos, we're going to discuss a bit regarding this form of contract. First, let us look at the PAM contract. So far, we have few versions of the PAM contract. The latest version, it will be PAM contract 2018. There are three types of PAM contract 2018. The first one, it will be PAM contract 2018 with quantities. Second one, PAM contract 2018 without quantities. And the third one, it will be PAM Sub-contract 2018. The two PAM contract 2018 here are meant for the main contractor, while the third one, PAM Sub-contract 2018, are for the subcontractor nominated under the PAM contract 2018. Now let us look at the difference between the two PAM contract 2018. One is with quantity, another one is without quantities. The main difference between these two PAM contracts, it will be whether the bill of quantity is provided together with the tender document. PAM contract with quantity, that means the tender document later, it will be provided with the bill of quantity. And PAM contract without quantity, that means the tender document does not provided with the bill of quantity. This means that for the PAM contract with quantities, the employer's QS will provide the quantities as a part of the specifications provided in the tender document for the contractor to bid for the price. The contractor only need to propose the price for the project, and the employer will evaluate the price proposed by the contractor. Under this mechanism, employer has employed himself a quantity surveyor as the professionals representing his site to work out the quantities, as well as for the purpose of evaluating the claim submitted by the contractors during the construction project. Therefore, within the terms of contract, particularly in clause 11, PAM contract empowers architect and or the quantity surveyor to evaluate the claim. This is different from the PAM contract without quantities, because the QS representing the employer is not providing the quantity together with the tender document. This is as if the tender is running without an appointed quantity surveyor. As a result, in order to submit for the tender document, the contractor will have to estimate the quantity and propose the price for the tendering work. In order to come up with the quantity, most likely the contractor will have to engage his own quantity surveyor for the task. As BQ is not provided by the employer, upon evaluating for a qualified contractor or selecting for a contractor to be awarded with the project, employer will have to evaluate both the quantities and the price. Compared to PAM contract with quantities, the employer only need to focus on the price proposed by the contractor. Now, for the PAM contract without quantities, the employer will need to evaluate both the quantities as well as the price. You know that when it comes to these quantities, as it is pure estimations based on the design given by the architects and engineers, different quantity surveyor may give different estimated quantities. Although the same set of technical drawings are provided, the estimated quantity might vary slightly. Therefore, when employer would like to evaluate for the tender document, The selections cannot purely on the basis of the lower price proposed by the contractor. There is a risk that the contractor or the quantity surveyor representing the contractor underestimated certain quantities. That's why the employer will need to check for the quantities as well. Normally, the employer will have to employ his own quantity surveyor. Only that if he chooses not to incorporate the BQ, he can use that as a comparison to whichever being proposed by the contractors. This shall serve as a guidance for him to make the best selections of the contractor. In the case of the PAM contract without quantities, it will be as if in the official manner the QS representing the employer is absent. That's why later in clause 11, PAM contract only empowers architect to evaluate the claim, which compared to PAM contract with quantities, quantity surveyor may be involved, but here there is no empowerment given to the quantity surveyor. Just now we mentioned that even though as if the quantity surveyor is absent, in practice there is still a quantity surveyor as appointed by the employer, assisting the architect in the contract administrations. Just that the architect will take the ultimate responsibility over the claim given by the contractors. I guess most of the students would like to ask, what is the main difference between PAM contract with quantities and PAM contract without quantities? This will be the major difference: the existence of the bill of quantities as well as the contributions of the quantity surveyor on behalf of the employer. More specifically, we are talking about the clause, which is clause 11 as well as clause 12, that appears in the PAM contract, reflecting the differences in terms of the roles of the quantity surveyors. We talk about clause 11 related to the claim given by the contractor. This represents the progress claim, which normally happen throughout the construction project upon completion of the work by the contractor. There will be another part might involve the claim, which is known as the VO. Now, if you look at the fundamental mechanism of these two types of PAM contract, you will be able to see that who is going to take responsibility in terms of the errors in estimating the quantities. You see the PAM contract with quantities. The BQ is provided by the employer. Should there any errors in estimating the quantities, the risk will be bounded by the employer. That means when it comes to the underestimating of the quantities, the contractors is allowed to claim for variations order, which is VO, and the employer will need to pay for the costs. Simply said, the BQ is provided by the employer when there is error in estimating of the quantities. All the risks related to the error of quantities will have to be fully bared by the employer. This is because the contractors is actually proposing the price in accordance to the quantities given. On the other hand, for the PAM contract without quantities, BQ now is not provided by the employer. Therefore, the employer is not responsible for the estimations of the quantities. The price proposed by the contractor, it will be on basis of its own estimations in terms of the quantities. Should there any errors in calculating the quantities, it will be fully borne by the contractors, and the contractors is not allowed to claim for any variations order due to its underestimations of these quantities. That will be the two main difference between the PAM contract with quantities and without quantities. Now the next question it will be, which one is better? I would say it is based on the preference of the employer. My personal understanding, PAM contract with quantities is more popular, which there is an involvement of a professional on behalf of the employer, which is the quantity surveyor, and this quantity surveyor will be able to contribute to the project officially for the contract administrations, and it is also easier to manage by the employer, especially at this stage selecting a suitable contractor for the work. Based on several tenders submitted by different contractors, the employer will only need to pay attention on the price since the quantities has already been standardized. This allowed the employer to be able to make more direct comparison among the price given by the contractors. Although we know that PAM contract is by fundamental a lump sum project, that means whichever price proposed by the contractor, that will be a fixed price as agreed between the contractors and the employer, which the contractor can deliver the work based on the contract sum. However, in the case of the contractor severely underestimated the quantities, even though the project is awarded to the contractor, there is no guarantee that the work can be completed, effectively delivered to the employer. There is still possibility that, especially when the contractor severely underestimated the quantities, the price bid by the contractor appears to be lowest among the others. If the employer chooses to go for the price, there is still risk of not acquiring the building or infrastructures as per required by the employer. Later, there will be a lot of contract administration problem between the employer and the contractor. Therefore, at the stage of selecting for the suitable contractor, if using the PAM contract without quantities, normally the employer will also need to check whether the quantities as proposed by the contractor is reasonable.